So, Craig Murray. Craig Murray is the former British ambassador to Uzbekistan, and he's just been jailed. He's been sentenced to 8 months in prison in Scotland. And this is such an unreal story. It's a scandalous, calling it a miscarriage of justice is, again, it's an understatement. This is Craig. So I want to tell you a little bit about him and his case. It's connected to Assange. It's very important, right? Like, we have to go through this because this is, again, an attack on whistleblowers and journalists. It's absolutely insane what they're doing to him. Really insane. So, you know, Craig, like I said, he was ambassador, the British ambassador to Uzbekistan, right? And he became a whistleblower as well. He became a whistleblower because he exposed torture by the British and the Americans in Uzbekistan. This is an article from the BBC. This is back in 2004, right? And they attacked him for this relentlessly, right? They tried to smear him after he did this. They tried to accuse him of, you know, they said things like, I don't know, things like, you know, about prostitutes and something. I don't want to go into the whole story, but, you know, they tried to attack his reputation and character assassinate him because of that. You know what I mean? So they were saying things like, you know, he's a sexual predator and all this nonsense. It's not true. It's completely nonsense because they had a Foreign Office investigation. You know, the FCO, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, they investigated and cleared him of it. But it doesn't matter because in the media and you know, elsewhere, the damage is already done. They character assassinated him. So anyway, after that, he becomes a blogger, right? And just before I continue, when he was exposing this torture, we're talking about, you know, MI6, CIA, and the authorities in Uzbekistan all working together, obtaining evidence under torture. So it goes very deep, and he blew the whistle on that. He did, you know, he did the right thing. And they tried to get rid of him. They character assassinated him. And after that, he becomes a blogger, right? He becomes a blogger, and he's, you know, he's a strong supporter of Scottish independence. And he joins the Scottish National Party, the SNP, afterwards in 2011. He's also a friend of Assange, right? So he's very involved with Assange. And actually, you can see he's mentioned here regarding the DNC leaks. So you guys remember the famed DNC leaks, which Hillary Clinton went ballistic over, and they say, oh my God, it cost her the election. Like, no, not that she's a terrible person and has terrible policies, and she's so bad that she actually helped push Trump. Remember the Pied Piper strategy? So regarding the DNC leaks, let me tell you how Craig is involved, right? So this is an article from The Guardian, okay? And this is when they were saying, oh, it's Russia, Russiagate. This is the beginning of Russiagate, okay? Now, Craig Murray, I'm just reading here. It says, Craig Murray, the former UK ambassador to Uzbekistan, who is a close associate of Julian Assange, called the CIA claims bullshit, adding that they are absolutely making it up. Craig Murray said, I know who leaked them. I've met the person who leaked them, and they are certainly not Russian, and it's an insider. It's a leak, not a hack. The two are different things. That's extraordinary, right? Because, you know, one of the huge things about Assange, one of the big smears that they try to pull all the time is like, oh, he's working with the Russians. You know, it's complete nonsense. We all know, Assange himself has said this on television, that the source is not Russian and it's not a state actor, right? It's nothing to do with Russia. So I think Craig and Assange, they're probably the only people who know the source, if I'm not mistaken. Craig definitely, at least, in any case. But there you go. And of course, Assange. I don't know if anyone else does. But you can see his relationship is very close. He's very deeply involved with WikiLeaks. And in order to understand why Craig went to jail now, you have to understand another court case. So he was basically covering this trial of Alex Salmond. Alex Salmond used to be the First Minister of Scotland, right? And this trial took place in 2020, last year. So there were 14 counts that Alex Salmond was charged with by 9 women. And, you know, he was accused of sexual harassment, and one of them was an accusation of rape. And he was cleared on all the charges. You know, so it's not just that he was cleared. There's tons of foul play in this case. And Craig is one of the only people, he's actually the only person, as far as I know, who covered the defense's case in detail, because everyone else was covering it from the prosecution's point of view, right? Like the BBC, the Scotsman, you know, all these mainstream outlets, they were basically covering it from the prosecution's point of view, which is what they do with Assange as well. But Craig Murray, he on his blog, he detailed the defense's case very, in very great detail. So, you know, let's go through what happened. Let's go through what happened, because they're charging him over his coverage. So you have to understand what happened, right? Now, just to give you an idea of the foul play that took place with Alex Salmond. You had 22 people in the police, right? In Scotland, and they tried to get women to file charges against him. So they I think for a year they went and they started interviewing like 400 women, and not a single one volunteered or you know, decided to file charges against him or accuse him of sexual harassment. The police somehow found out that there was a woman that he had kissed. You know, they said that he kissed her some years ago, and they asked her, "Do you want to file charges against Salmond for sexual harassment?" And she said, "No, because he kissed me on the cheek like a friend. I don't want to file charges against him." So did you see it's very politically motivated when you have the police trying to, like, you know, almost fabricate the case. And these are things that Craig Murray talked about. Craig Murray, I said, I'm going to quote this to you. Okay, so Murray claims that Salmond was actually the victim of a high-level plot by senior politicians to discredit him and prevent his return to the forefront of Scottish politics. And for those of you who don't know, Sturgeon, she took over after him. And there's a problem in the SNP, in the Scottish National Party. There's a split, there's a divide, and it's going on for some time now, which is how to go about independence. You have people who say that, you know, one wing of the party wants independence, but they're just paying lip service. It's just all talk. And Salmond, Alex Salmond, he's someone who was very, very serious about independence. He actually wanted to, you know, take on Westminster and get it done. And, you know, they took him out for that. That's what this is about. And Craig made this point very clear, that they stitched him up, they framed him with this thing. And again, it's not even about if it's real or not. It's they just have to say it, and the damage is done, because 2/3 of the jury were women. The entire case was thrown out. He wasn't found guilty of anything, but it was enough to get him out of politics, to get him out of the SNP. You understand? So Craig Murray talked about this, and then what? You know, I just want to give you another example of the foul play in the case. There was something that happened in Edinburgh Airport where Alex Salmond allegedly made some, like, sexual comment to this woman. And you have to remember that the women in the case, we don't know their names. And you'll see why this is very important in a second. They're named Woman A, Woman B, Woman C, etc. And I was at Craig's court thing in a second, I'll tell you. But in any case, Salmond was at Edinburgh Airport, and he told this woman that she has killer heels. And this was all over the media, and it turns out she had set off the alarm, you know, the metal detector. When you walk through the airport, the shoes, if they have metal, they can set off the alarm. And he made a joke that they're killer heels. And they took this joke out of context. And said that it was a sexual comment, like he's, you know, like objectifying her or something. It's complete bullshit, right? So that's another example of this, where they're trying to stitch him up. There's another thing where the rape accusation, where he went to a dinner party with a woman, and he allegedly raped her afterwards, after the party. And it turns out she never attended the party. She was never there. And how do we know this? We know this because of the other witnesses. For example, a woman who knew this accuser well, she actually received a phone call. She was asked to go instead. And the accuser actually had the accuser, she had something like a cast or something on her arm. And, you know, the other people who were at this dinner party never saw someone with a cast on their arm. You know, it's something you would remember. So she was never there. And it just shows you, like, how they just made the entire thing up. The rape charges, all of it. And Craig Murray exposed this. He exposed this in his blog, in his reporting. Okay? And, you know, by the way, they don't say that he raped her. They say he tried to rape her, right? So it's very... We don't know the identity of the woman, and they say that Alex Salmond allegedly wanted to rape this woman, but she never attended this dinner party, okay? So you have very big discrepancies, and Craig Murray, he reported on all this, and then what happens? They got him thrown out for it. So they said, we don't want you to cover this anymore. The judge kicked him out, and they said that we're going to charge you. And what did they charge him with? They charged him with contempt of court. So the main thing was Jigsaw identification. I think another one was influencing the jury. And there were 3 counts of this, yes? And Craig was convicted. They convicted him on Jigsaw identification. So what is that? It's basically this notion that he allegedly revealed the identities of these women, right? Because as I said, they're anonymous. In court, they're referred to as woman A, woman B, woman C. And Craig, they accuse him of giving clues in his reporting that would allow someone to, piece together, like a jigsaw puzzle, the identity of the women. And it's complete nonsense. And I'll show you why. Because he did no such thing. For example, there was the Google searches thing. It was proven that he actually, Craig Murray, he Googled certain things to make sure that no results would turn up before he published, so that he could protect the identities of the women. He actually, he specifically, purposely went through the effort of protecting their identities. That's one thing. And they say over here, I'm just trying to pull this up for you. This is from Craig on his Twitter, right? Craig Murray. He says that the polling was conducted by panel base as an extra question in one of their standard Scottish opinion polls. I paid for the question, but there was no mechanism by which I could affect the results. Okay? It showed Danny Garavelli as by far the biggest source of identification. So he basically, he got a poll done, and one of the questions is, how did you discover or deduce the identity of the accuser or accusers? And the answers were not him, but mainstream outlets like the BBC. That's what the people said in the polls. You see, via newspapers, newspaper websites, or newspaper social media. And most people said that they don't know. So they answered no on this question before. They said, do you believe that you personally know the identities of any of the accusers? 92% said no. And you can see all the other outlets over here. They asked people to name journalists or specific newspapers or broadcasters which contributed to that. And you can see the Sun, Scotland, on Sunday, Guardian, Daily Beast. These are all mainstream outlets, nothing to do with Craig. So if you're going to charge someone for Jigsaw identification, why don't you charge them as well? They didn't. They went after Craig specifically, right? That's why they went after him. And there's another thing over here that you need to understand, which is very, very shocking. The judge didn't even disprove his sworn testimony. Craig Murray in court, he said, he swore under oath, right, that he did not intend to reveal their identities, okay, and that he did not, intend to cause any harm and so forth. And they never disproved that in court. So do you understand how bad this is? The judge, Lady Dorian, she essentially just, decided after reading his blog posts or his reporting that he was guilty of Jigsaw identification, but she couldn't actually prove that, he led a campaign to reveal their identities. This is so absurd. This is so obviously political and trying to stitch him up. It's really messed up. It's really messed up. There's so many things wrong with this case. And just a second, I'm trying to pull up as many documents as I can, right? Again, if you're going to charge Craig Murray with this, why wouldn't you charge the BBC? As you can see from this poll, the mainstream outlets did far more to reveal the identities of the accusers, or at least give information. Because you understand, the charge is that he would give some clue, let's say her hair was blonde or something like that, whatever. And then because he wrote that, someone with other knowledge in the public domain, so they went and read something in the BBC, could piece together those two pieces of information like a jigsaw puzzle and then deduce her identity. But he never did that. And I mean, man, for God's sake, do you know this guy has health problems? Like, they have something mandatory that they have to do. It's called the social work report for court. And in the social work report, they said that Craig Murray is unfit for community service, never mind a custodial sentence. So basically, it's not good for him to go to jail. And the last time, you know, that he was, the British political establishment was going after him because of the whistleblowing thing, you know, he had some problems with his heart. He almost died. So they know damn well that sending him to jail is bad for his health. He can't even do community service. That's what the social work says, the official one, the social work report. So despite the health problems, they sent him to jail. Despite the fact that the mainstream media has done more to potentially, you know, carry out Jigsaw identification than him, they still sent him to jail. And they let off the mainstream media. You know, they let them off the hook. Despite the fact that he purposely took steps, like the Google search thing, you know, he swore that he never did anything to try and compromise our identities. They still accused him of that and sent him to jail for it. I mean, this is so political. And, you know, I want to say something else also. Craig Murray, if he wanted to reveal their identities, I mean, you don't think he could have done that without having it traced back to him? Like I said, he knows, you know, people in the activist world. He knows people in, you know, you name it. He's very well connected. This is my point. He's well connected. He's in no shortage of friends. If he wanted to release the identities, he could have done that easily online, anonymously, without having it traced back to him. He could have done it outside of Scottish jurisdiction. He could have done it if he wanted to. He never did that. And who gets to decide what Jigsaw identification is? You know, if something an independent blogger or journalist posts counts as Jigsaw identification, but then the mainstream media does even worse, and that doesn't count as Jigsaw identification. What is that? What kind of message is that sending? The message here is that they're going to punish whistleblowers, independent journalists, people who expose their wrongdoing and foul play, and they're going to give mainstream media a pass, as they always do. It's no different from anywhere else, and this is very, very bad. And another thing I want to point out here that Craig underlined, I want to point out something else here. He posted this on Twitter. This is so fucking outrageous. Just wait till I read this to you. Take a look. This is so outrageous. Look at what he said. This is on May 11th this year, okay? They took away his passport. Look what Craig said. Actually, what I found most shocking about that was the peculiar determination of the judges to make sure that during the 3 weeks we have to lodge the appeal, I am not allowed to go to Spain to testify in the criminal prosecution for the CIA spying on Assange's legal team. Oh, how stinky. That is so goddamn fishy. So you guys know that UC Global is a Spanish firm, and this company was contracted to do security at the Ecuadorian embassy in London. The CIA got UC Global to spy on Julian Assange while he was living in the embassy, while he had political asylum, right? Craig Murray visited Assange a lot. Stefania Morizzi, right? Who's been on the show, great friend. She's also visited Assange a lot. Glenn Greenwald. You know, they spied on them. They even spied on Assange's conversations with his lawyers in the bathroom. They had a microphone under the fire extinguisher. You know, they bugged the entire place. They spied on Assange. They even tried to steal his kid's diaper. They were discussing, I heard in court in the Old Bailey, like these former employees of UC Global, they were testifying anonymously on behalf of Assange's defense. And they were saying how they even discussed a plot to kidnap and poison Assange, to potentially kidnap and poison him. I mean, this is insane. That's a fucking conspiracy to commit murder. I mean, or kidnapping at best, whatever that means. But you get my point here. Like, there was something extremely foul afoot. And Craig Murray's one of the people who was spying on, just because they spied on everyone going in the embassy. And just when he's supposed to go to Spain to testify against this company, because they're trying... David Morales is the head of UC Global, and he's being tried in Spain. And just when Craig Murray is supposed to go testify as witness, he can't travel anymore. God, that is so stinky. I mean, you want to tell me that's just a coincidence? Use your fucking brain. God, that is no. I don't buy that for a second. That's not a coincidence. But I mean, this is just one out of many big problems. You know, just going back to this Jigsaw identification thing. Craig Murray's the first person to be jailed ever for that. Can you imagine that? He's the first fucking person in the history of the UK and Scotland to be jailed for Jigsaw identification. No one's ever been jailed for that. And the last people to be jailed for contempt of court, this was, I think, 70 years ago in Scotland and 50 years ago in the UK. And those cases, those people, they committed way worse offenses. They published way more information for this, you know, and they were only fined for it. They only had to pay fines. They were not sent to jail. So why is Craig Murray being sent to jail for something where you're just fined? Why is he being sent to jail despite his health problems? Why is he being prevented from testifying in the UC Global case? You know, the CIA spying on Assange and him. How weird, right? How weird. So I want to read you another astonishing conclusion, because you need to understand, by the way, I attended I attended Craig's court case. So this was in January, I think, right? And man, this was tough because I was literally attending 2 court cases at the same time. So one in Scotland and one in England. So the one in Scotland was for Craig, and the one in England was about the Freedom of Information Act. So Stefania Morizzi, she did something incredible. She got a decision from the UK that anyone in the world can apply for a Freedom of Information Act request, including me, because, you know, I'm a British citizen, but I'm not there, so I can't use it. But now I can, thanks to Stefania and her lawyers. So that's very important. That's a landmark decision. That means anyone, anywhere in the world can request a FOIA from the UK government. This is extremely important, because why did you do this? Because they were trying to block her because she's Italian and she doesn't live in the UK. They're trying to block her from requesting a Freedom of Information Acts about the UK government's exchanges with various governments about Assange. So they're like, oh, hold on a second, you're not even in the UK. Let's find some legal loophole to block her from even making the request. And she got it overturned. She a huge victory. So that was happening at the same time as Craig Murray's thing. And dude, I mean, I'm actually scared. Like, how much am I allowed to report? Am I also going to go to jail for contempt of court because I talked about Craig's case? I'm seriously asking what's going to happen if I say like something too mean now. I mean, the whole thing is it's a farce. It's really a farce. Why are they like wasting so many resources and effort to jail a man who has health problems, who committed no crime? It's a political witch hunt. It's a goddamn kangaroo court. That's what it is. They couldn't even prove that he lied in his sworn testimony. They couldn't even prove him wrong. They just decided you're going to jail. Un-goddamn believable. And you know, the final nail in the coffin, even if you want to come here and you want to tell me, you know what, Craig Murray, he didn't do anything, like there's no vendetta against Craig Murray. He's genuinely guilty, whatever that means. Even if you want to argue this nonsense, the next thing that I'm about to say to you should scare you very much. This is from the judge, Lady Dorian, in her ruling. What does she say? She says, the applicant, meaning Craig Murray, describes himself as a, quote, journalist in new media. Whatever that may involve, it is relevant to distinguish his position from that of the mainstream press, which is regulated and subject to codes of practice and ethics in a way in which those writing as the applicant does are not. To the extent that the submissions for the applicant make comparisons with other press contempts and the role of mainstream journalists, this is a factor which should be recognized. Do you know what she's doing? She's saying that independent bloggers, independent journalists should be punished harder and held to a different standard from mainstream journalists. That's what she just said and what she just did. That's what she just did, because as I told you, other outlets like the BBC, you saw the poll. dozens of outlets. They all reported about this Alex Salmond case, and they disclosed even more damning, information for this Jigsaw identification, and they weren't punished. And she's saying it like, yeah, I'm going to hold you to a different standard because you're not a mainstream journalist. What? Jesus Christ. I mean, do you see what they're doing here? Do you see what they're doing here? Jailing Craig Murray, who's, again, he's a whistleblower, right? About the torture. He's reporting about Alex Salmond's case. He reported about Assange's case. I don't know if I mentioned that. I think many of you may already know. He was also, I was in court with him. If you look at, do you remember the speech that I gave outside the Old Bailey? That's him behind me. He gives fire speeches. That's Craig. So he also reported, on the court case, and the NUJ tried to screw him. They wouldn't give him a press card, so he had to go in the public gallery with me. You see how they like try to screw journalists in every way. They try to put roadblocks so you can't actually do your job. So he reported very extensively on the Assange thing. I mean, he's also involved with WikiLeaks for a long time, very knowledgeable. And she's saying, yeah, you know what? Mainstream media, they're more they're better disciplined or self-regulating or whatever the fuck that means. So, I mean, this is obviously such a, not only wrong, but just, and immoral, but just factually incorrect. I mean, the mainstream media is the most vile, the most vile apparatus in existence. But you can see how this ruling is dangerous because they denied his high court appeal as well. Let me rephrase that. Craig Murray, after he was sentenced, he tried to appeal this at the Supreme Court, right? Hold on, let me pull this up for you so you can see it over here. He tried to appeal it to the Supreme Court, okay? They didn't decline, his case. They even, this is so crazy. They wouldn't even let him make the case to appeal. Do you understand? They wouldn't even hear him out. They're like, no, there's no appeal. Go to jail. Because, sometimes you have preliminary hearings. They decide whether they're going to let you appeal at the High Court or the Supreme Court, right? They wouldn't even do that. They said, no, go to jail. And so yesterday, at St. Leonard's police station, he surrendered himself. I'm going to play you the video. You had tons of people who showed up, Shout out to everyone and also to Team Assange.
For auld lang syne, my dear, for auld lang syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet for all.
I mean, this is really sad. 8 months in jail. Even 1 month, 1 day in jail. This is absurd. It's so obviously political and a vendetta, a real vendetta. I mean, you can take your pick. I don't know. Maybe they're punishing him for the whistleblowing, although they tried to character assassinate him already for that. But you know how vindictive they are. And so not just the whistleblowing on the torture, but maybe also his work with Assange, his reporting on Assange, the reporting on Salmond, obviously. Who knows? It's all of these things, maybe, right? But this is very dangerous. It's very evil. It's very unfair for Craig. And it's also, again, setting a dangerous precedent for the media. Like, this is so insane. Like, almost every week, we're having some new kind of affront on journalists, right? I mean, the same week as Craig, Daniel Hale was jailed, right? We covered that. He's a whistleblower. He talked about the drone program. But also, recently, they're trying to reform the Official Secrets Act, right? They're telling journalists in the UK, if you publish something that's classified, it's an unauthorized disclosure, you're worse than an enemy spy because more people will find out about this classified information than if a spy had stolen it. What kind of logic is that? Unbelievable, right? So they're trying to reform the OSA. They just jailed Craig Murray, and they're saying that mainstream journalists are better than independent ones. Like they should be held to a less strict standard for some reason for the same crime. I thought the crime is a crime. Whether, actually, if it's a mainstream journalist, shouldn't it be worse since they have more reach? Apparently not. It's the opposite. If you're an independent blogger, you're apparently more dangerous allegedly when committing Jigsaw identification, which again, he did not do. And you know, the whole thing with Assange, never mind that. That's also something extraordinary. They just decided recently to grant the appeal, to let the appeal go ahead. It's so many things happening at once. It's really worrying. It's really worrying, man. And Craig is a very nice gentleman. You know, I don't know him too well, but we did speak in London, and you know, after the Assange thing. We spoke briefly, and yeah, he should not be in a jail cell. This is ridiculous. This is absurd. What, you know, if you're telling journalists they can't cover court cases because, especially independent ones, because they're going to be held to a different standard, and they won't even be able to have an appeal, because when the High Court says, the Supreme Court is not even letting Craig Murray appeal, that means they're outright agreeing with Lady Dorian's decision and reaffirming that, yeah, fuck you if you're an independent journalist. You can't come and talk about anything happening in a court case, a kangaroo court that we've set up, or we're going to jail you. And mainstream media journalists can get away with it. That's the message they're sending. But, yeah, he should not be in jail. This is obscene. And it's very obviously a vendetta. Very obviously a vendetta. So now you have both Julian Assange and Craig Murray, who are in Britain, in the UK, in jails, political prisoners. This is shameful. This is shameful. This is very shameful. And regrettable. You know, I would expect better from the United Kingdom, which claims to be a democracy. I expect better. This is not democratic. This is not fair. This is unfair. This is unjust. This is not acceptable in any way at all. I want to read you also something from his wife. So Craig Murray, again, his blog, he that's where he posts all his brilliant reporting, and he said that this was, you know, in typical Craig fashion. What does he say? He says, "This blog will be going dark for a few months. The Queen kindly paid for my dinners for over 20 years while I was a British diplomat and ambassador, and now she's going to be paying for my dinners again. That is very, very kind. I thought she had forgotten me." I'll read you also a statement from his wife. It says, "Today is the most heartbreaking day. My husband, whose health has been found to not be suitable for prison, must hand himself in for detention within hours following the UK Supreme Court's decision not to hear his appeal. We were extremely hopeful that the Supreme Court would hear his case and had no doubt that this particular case should have been heard given how important and relevant it is in the context of freedom of speech in the UK. Instead, the Supreme Court declined to hear it. Yet again, my heart is deeply saddened to find that the UK, once a country which placed great importance on human rights issues, has failed to listen to my husband's case. Additionally, the Scottish court outright dismissed Craig's poor health, having been made aware through the mandatory social work report and doctor's reports that his well-being would be at risk if forced to go to jail. At first, I tried to come to terms of him being jailed in the hope he would be granted dignified conditions in jail, but I'm saddened and shocked to learn he could be placed among criminals with no ability to bring books or enable him to write, with no entertainment allowed. He's being treated like a criminal. This is not just this is not a just punishment. This is a deliberate attempt to break the spirit of anyone brave enough to make use of free speech. Given a pen and paper, what do? You write in your own voice, speaking the truth. Having been with Craig for 2 decades, he has always spent his time and energy highlighting injustices and standing up for what is right, carefully, considerately, and consistently. I was brought up during Soviet times and post-independence in my own country, Uzbekistan. I have witnessed and personally experienced myself what the price of freedom of speech truly is. Opponents were disappeared, or it was claimed they had taken their own life or been locked away in asylums. I am filled with fear this pattern is now repeating itself in the UK. It is appalling to see Craig is going through the same treatment in the so-called human rights respecting country, United Kingdom. This is an attack on truth tellers. His writings are those of a highly qualified journalist, human rights activist, former rector of Dundee University, and former British ambassador. To us, his family, this situation is devastating. I am now left with my 5-month-old baby, yet to find a good way to explain Craig's jail sentence to his confused and anxious 12-year-old son. Of any readers concerned with the loss of freedom of speech and equality before the law, I ask that you show active and outspoken solidarity with my partner. And we do. Indeed, we do. So, I hope we can at least write to Craig. I don't know if there's anything like that yet, but he shouldn't be in there, man. This is, again, a political witch hunt. And, yeah, I have nothing more to add to this statement. Really. It's all there. It's all there. So, yeah, it's very heartbreaking. They're going after everyone, you know?